PHDJ podcast. Let's go. With your hosts, Mike Walter, owner of Elite Entertainment in New Jersey, and Joe Bunn, owner of Bunn DJ Company in North Carolina. Get ready to learn from two mobile DJ industry veterans with over 200 episodes under their belt. It's time for the PHDJ podcast.
Hey everybody, can't believe how great things went at the Marquee Show. We got so many great questions that we've actually cut this in half and made 2 episodes out of it. So here's part 2 from the Marquee Show with Joe Bunn taking a question from the audience.
Okay, hold on, let me get this guy right here.
Well, to piggyback off what Casey just said, I'm in a little bit different spot. I still have a full-time job in radio, have a multi-op, have a photo booth business. When COVID hit, I took my PPP loans, kept my key people employed, and did radio. Now we're getting busy again, and I have no employees except for 2 DJs who have full-time jobs. Sure. So unlike retention, my problem now is I'm going to grow again and get back to doing 100+ events a year. I got to find people. Do you see any changes in the way hiring's going to go on now, or am I going to have to give people more skin in the game? I can't find someone. I could pay someone $50 an hour to run a photo booth. I can't find people. No. And in September when unemployment runs out, they'll do it for $12.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So do I just wait, or do you guys see a trend in the industry and how we're going to hire people going forward?
Mike, you want to say something?
Well, you didn't hear this from me, and I wouldn't record this on a podcast. But there is one business model. Not recommending it. Not saying anyone I know has done this, but you can pay people cash, which is a way to get around that. And I'm not suggesting it, but that is one way to retain or bring some people back off of unemployment. I agree. I think the unemployment thing last year was critical to save people and stop them from being homeless and starving. But I think at this point the government needs to shut that spigot off, or at least make that spigot harder to drink from, because there are legitimate people who are being offered jobs that aren't coming back because of that. And Joe's already cringing because that's as political as Joe ever wants to get on this podcast. But yeah, I mean, the government just has to do something, because there's too many people right now that are like, I'd like to come back and work, but
So you don't see anything particular in having to try to find a new way to hire people, like run an ad on Indeed or this or that or incentive or whatever. Well, maybe just a matter of time and waiting it out.
Yeah, I'm not new in the last year, but certainly if you haven't changed your hiring strategy over the last 5 to 10 years, then yeah, it's not. I mean, my book that I put out 10 years ago, I talk about classified ads in a newspaper. Yeah. That's obviously no longer the case. Yeah. I use Craigslist, I use Facebook jobs. That's how I'm recruiting, trying to find.
Well, I'll just touch on that real briefly. I mean, like you were saying, number one, there's only 2 months until unemployment runs out. But you're right. I mean, I went in 7 stores in Raleigh the other day running errands, and all 7 of them had a now hiring sign. The airport leaving 2 days ago out of Raleigh is a ghost town. None of the restaurants are open. None of the bars are open. They're shuttered, and it's mainly because they can't find anybody to work. American Airlines that I took to get here, I don't even know if I can get back on it because they just shut down a bunch of flights. So it's in that like Mars said, you're getting a check, you can sit at home and play Xbox mode. It runs out in a couple months. But again, I will say this, and I used it over the pandemic to try and hire assistants. I mean, Indeed is working like gangbusters for me. Use the paid platform. It's working for my sister in Montana. It's working for my company in Charlotte. Like, they are getting good, talented people, qualified people off Indeed. Paid listings.
To piggyback off of that, have you two as multi-ops looked at the trend of the workforce that you're having to train going forward, and knowing the ideology and what you will have to deal with as far as the next generation of DJs, because their philosophy is different about what hard work is.
That's true. That's true.
So I don't necessarily say it's entitled. Okay, listen, if we had the internet when we were at teenagers, imagine the advance we would go, in that sense. So I was thinking that, had you guys thought about the philosophy of like having a 21-year-old be committed for 6 months to get to the at the end of a rainbow and taste those things is much more difficult than us right now. So what's your thought process about that?
I mean, the main thing with me in terms of hiring, especially the last, I think 3 people, is I've been seeking those people, because I'm trying to create a legacy. I still love the DJ, still go out every weekend, not as much as Mike, but I'm still out there. But I also want to get to the point where when I want to step away from it and just run the business, I'm able to do that. And so then we've got these, let's just say 21 to 30-something-year-old guys, girls that have maybe not started a family, don't have too nice of a house and too many cars and living above their means. Like, that's the kind of people I'm looking for now. And as much as I want to stereotype them, there are, and you've met them, you deal with young people all the time, whether they're dancers or people that you entertain or whatever. There are that category, Linus, for example, that was shooting all my videos before he moved to LA because it's a bigger opportunity. There are people that will grind and hustle, just like when Mike was 21 or I was 21 or you were 21. It's a different generation, I will admit that. Even I'd see it in my kids. You want to think it's genetic. You want to think you've passed that DNA hustle to your kids, but they ain't got it. Mine don't.
I think you have to change the math as far as what you're like. How big of a roster do you have to do X amount of events? I used to say if I have 16 DJs, we can do 1,000 events a year. If I want to hit 1,000 events a year now, I got to have 22 DJs because they just, I put this on Facebook recently. 20 years ago, my conversations were, Mike, if you don't get me more gigs, I'm out of here. Now they're, Mike, if you keep getting me this number of gigs, I'm out of here. I don't want to work this much. You know what I mean? So I have more conversations with DJs about not booking them late on a Sunday night, or they don't want to do 3 gigs in a weekend. So, and listen, you can shake your head, but you have to embrace the fact that this is what reality is. I have a sign in my office that says you can't adjust the wind. You can't change the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And I mean, that's what it is. This new generation, and who's to say they're right or wrong? I mean, I skipped my entire decade of my 30s because I was working my ass off. If I had a heart attack at 39, well, what good would that have done, right? So this generation refuses to be worked to death and wants to enjoy some of their time. I mean, I can't criticize that. I preach it. So it just is what it is. You just have to adjust your expectations. We're still recording, right?
Yeah. Yep. I do want to have one more just kind of input on that. Like Mike was saying, though, I've got guys also now that are into the late 40s, almost 50, my age, and they're also saying, I don't want to work every weekend. I don't need to do 3. I even tell Randy that. I call Randy all the time, and I'm like, I played 3 in a row, three nights in a row last weekend, and I was like, man, that ain't for me. Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, I feel like I get hit with a bang.
Yeah. I mean, Mike did 4 last weekend, 4 for 4. Right. It's childish to him. But I was like, I just don't want to do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I've got other things I want to be doing now. And again, he just made the point. I mean, life is too short. You know what I mean? I'd like to think I got another 40 years here, but I don't know that.
And P.S., I don't want to do it either, but I'm looking at it, right. I'm looking at it. This is making up for last year's. And if I average out the number of events I did last year and this year, it'll average out to a normal year for me. But keeping an eye on next year is important. And I've already, my sweet spot for me personally is 65 events a year. I just looked the other day, I've got 51 booked already for next year, for 2022. So, I mean, if I'm going to land at 65, I can only take 14 more events. That's a great feeling to be in, but it's also, I'm going to get to the point where I go, oh, maybe I can do 70 or 75 or,
I have another question. I'm sorry. No,
you know what, Mars, before you do, Todd, and then we'll get to you, and then we'll probably wrap. What's up, Todd?
Lighter question. Between the two of you, over 60 years of experience, is that right?
True.
Oh, you don't have to rub that in.
sound like Paulie.
Yes, Todd, yes.
It's over 100, so let's not even go there. But you guys have seen some stuff. We have all seen some stuff in our days. And I always say, someday I'm going to write a book. So, if you guys are going to write that book, give me that one chapter that everyone just wants to read. Like, give me that one chapter that was just like, oh, I got to tell everybody about.
I mean, mine is, the story I've told in seminars. Every time I speak at a university, I always tell the story about I played at Bald Head Island. And Bald Head Island is off the coast of North Carolina. You have to take a ferry there. There's no cars allowed. So you have to take all your gear out of your car. You put it on a cart, roll it up a ramp. They put it on the ferry, take it over. And then the two wedding planners met me there with a golf cart. And then I had to load it onto a golf cart where the clubs go. I think I was using that Bose L1 system at the time, my coffin, MacBook, and everything. And I load the cart, and I kind of hop on the back, to kind of hold it up there, and they're on the front. And they go, it's been raining for 3 days here. The cart path is flooded. Well, we start driving, but we've been able to drive through it. So we start to drive, and I see what is flooded, and we start to drive through it, and the cart, of course, electricity, water, stops. And this girl, Kara, the wedding planner, is like, I'll get out and push. She had on a short skirt. I had on a suit. I let her. She gets out. What? What am I doing? She walks to the back. She starts pushing the cart. The other girl reaches across and engages the gas. It goes forward, and all the gear falls off. I mean, I'm talking about a swamp. She goes underwater. That's how deep it was. MacBook Pros floating. Those little Bose subs float, by the way, which is weird. Tourists are riding by laughing at me. I'm crying, like actually crying, screaming, take me back to the ferry, F this, I will kill everybody on this island. They're like, no, you can't go back. There's no DJs. It's an island, and I'm going nuts. It's 2 hours before the wedding. So we finally corral the gear, and I lay it all out on the deck at this country club, and I start going through what works. I had an iPod in my pocket. I had my phone in my pocket, and it had the top 200 and their special dances. One speaker still worked. The MacBook, literally, I opened and dumped water out of that. I had a handheld mic because the other one went underwater. And until the bride read that blog post, she never knew that I was gear down, because the crossfader still worked on. I had the CDJ 1000s. The crossfader still worked, so I hooked up an iPod, and then a corded mic, and I just carried that speaker around with me, like to the different parts of the venue. It was nuts. Worst story ever. Greatest worst story ever. Do you have one like that?
Thankfully, I don't have anything like that.
It's pretty bad.
I don't want to get too emotional here, but when people ask me about my most memorable event, I used to do this monthly gig it was a banquet hall / restaurant. They called it Network Night, but it was really it was a dance party. And for years, it was the second Thursday of the month. And I remember that because post 9/11, which 9/11 was a Tuesday. So 2 days later, I called Vicky, and I go, Vicky, we're not having Network Night tonight, are we? And she goes, yeah, we're going to open the doors. We're going to do it. She goes, you can still come, right? I'm like, shit, yeah, okay. And now keep in mind, 9/11 was emotional for everybody, but we're literally in the shadow on the Jersey Shore. You could still see the smoke coming up from Ground Zero. I played 2 hours of cocktail hour music. That was always the format. They had the buffet on the dance floor, but then after the buffet was struck, it was like, open things up. And I'm like, these fucking people are never going to dance. Like, everybody was just still somber. I was shocked that anybody even showed up. But I dropped a couple of dance songs, and people started moving, and people started shaking, and then it got better and better and better. And I'll never forget, this woman just comes up to me and hugs me, and she goes, we needed this. And that's emotionally I'll never forget that, and it also just reminds us what we do when things are at their worst.
Man, that's a good one. That's a good story. Mine's terrible.
Hey, sorry to interrupt our podcast, but I have to share something alarming with you. I just found out that there are some DJs who still aren't using DJ Event Planner. Can you believe it? I barely can. I mean, this software does it all. It streamlines everything you need to run a successful DJ business in one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner is perfect for boutique DJs as well as large multi-ops. Your sales will increase with their best-in-the-business CRM tools and automated emails. And your customer satisfaction will go through the roof as your clients start to use the awesome online planning tools. Best of all, there's no software to install and no backups to worry about. So if you're one of those few DJs who haven't switched over yet, what are you waiting for? Head to djeventplanner.com right now and start your free 30-day trial. Go ahead. Joe and I will be here when you get back.
I wanted to ask a question that for multi-ops, since branding is so important, you also talked about a lot of you guys having their own gear. How have you been able to manage the branding aspect with the guys having their own gear, in that sense? You mind sharing that in that sense? Because your shit's sweet. You got the white and the lights and everything like that. Not everybody's got Bunn money.
They don't. They don't. I don't even have any money, but I love to look like I have money, which is key. It's key. I'll say this. It's just like Michael probably tell you the same. There's still a Bunn DJ company brand standard. We've had training meetings. In fact, we might have done it when Mike came, and we've done it multiple times since, where we literally have rented a small room like this and had, in fact, there was a round room in a hotel for a while, and I had all my guys at that time, I think there was 8 or 10, come in what they would wear to a wedding and literally set up their equipment. And I just went around the room and dressed them down. I was like, that cable cannot hang like that. That's terrible. Those square-toed shoes are dog shit. Never wear them again. I mean, I was pretty brutal. I went, that computer's not going to make it another year. I can tell by the dust on the fan on the side. Lose it. It was that kind of almost like a military setup, where I went through each of their things, and I'm probably being more of an ass than I was. I was really just trying to help, but also just made sure, were they using EV or Shure mics? Did they have EV or QSC speakers? There was a certain level of professionalism, not consumer grade, but more professional grade gear that I wanted. And I encourage, the guys, if they want to skin, a DJ Mars or DJ Mike Walter brand. I've helped a lot of them, with their Fiverr or 99 Designs to get a little personal brand. At the end of the day, I still want their loyalty, their allegiance when they're doing a show. I still want the Bunn DJ Company card handed out, even if it's a bar gig that I made nothing on. There's 20 bridesmaids that are probably, or 20 girls that might be getting married in that bar. Please still give out our card. And knock on wood, I've been very lucky with that. What would you say?
Yeah, I don't really have a standard setup, and nor do our clients expect it. And I think it's one of the reasons why, if you look on the Elite Entertainment website, you see very few pictures of equipment, because Dominic's setup is going to look different to mine. Obviously, I've got a minimum standard, but one of the things I find when DJs buy their own gear, I never have a problem with them buying substandard stuff. I've had to tell some of my DJs, dude, you don't have to replace your controller every year. Like just because something new. So maybe I've just gotten lucky that my staff just has that level of quality that they want to maintain. But yeah, I mean, my DJs, if I set a level of standard, they're exceeding it easily with what they want to purchase. So it's never been a challenge for me. And to me, my brand is much more about a packed dance floor than it is. As long as this looks acceptable back here and doesn't look like crap, I don't. To me, it's all about what we do on the dance floor. Yeah.
How much do you guys decide to pay your DJs? Do you take into account how long they've been doing it, talent, what kind of gear they have? Do you have a formula for that?
Not gear, but definitely experience level. To me, it's also about how many referrals you bring in. If you make the phone ring, well, that's an outdated way of saying it. But if you bring in leads and those leads are strong and they close, and we track referrals very closely, that makes you a more valuable DJ. It's all in my system. It's all based on the percentage of the booking, because we do have different price points. We give discounts on Fridays, and as you get closer. So obviously, in my company, your incentive is to try to get booked as far in advance as possible, while we're still charging top dollar, so that your 60% of that is higher than it would be once we start discounting.
Mine's a little bit different. I mean, ours is pretty standard, 40%. Once you've hit that training level where I'm comfortable to send you out to a show, you can. They are free to see the contract. I have that feature turned on DJ Event Planner, and so let's say it's $2,600, which is that middle package that we usually book. They make $1,040 because they just multiply whatever that bottom line is times 0.40. So you oftentimes have, though, DJs will just pass on a show. Maybe we got $500 to do some pool party, and they don't want to stand out in the heat or whatever because they only make $200. And so, but that's when you can go to the newer people on the roster and start to get them that build that brand, if you will. Yeah.
Do you guys have your DJs sign like a contract, say they don't show up to an event, or, you know, obviously it's your brand, so we want to make sure that, you know,
You're covered. And non-compete too.
We don't have a non-compete with our staff. My non-compete is a handshake and a promise, and knock wood, I haven't had to explain that to anybody in a long time, and I haven't had it fought. As far as DJs not showing up, again, knock wood, we don't have that problem. I don't know that there's a contract that could fix that problem, because if a guy wants to, or a gal wants to screw you over, they're going to screw you over whether they signed a contract or not. I mean, from day one, we instill in our staff that this is not the type of job you can phone out for, or, you know, not show for. And I think any entertainer who has any sense of pride in their performance just would never do something like that. So, I mean, I know a lot of multi-op owners who talk to me about it. Aren't you afraid? Don't you lay awake at night staring at the ceiling? I really don't, because my staff is extremely responsible, and I just don't have that issue.
In that part of also your vetting process, you kind of know, you know, because I think people show who they are, you know, after a few events, depending on their language, body language, and what their focus is on. You know, if their focus is on, you know, always about getting paid, then you really need to do a deeper dive of where they are, because ultimately that usually ends not in a good place.
Yeah, Mike and I have both missed. I mean, he's hired people, I'm sure, that he thought were going to be rock stars. I've hired people I thought were going to be rock stars, and they just didn't pan out. You know, never even went on the first gig, quite frankly. You know, I was almost mad I wasted time shadowing them and training them. So sometimes you miss, but often in the vetting or the interview process, you can weed it out. And again, going back to your question, I don't think there's anything wrong with it's not necessarily a contract, but almost like a code of conduct or a rules and regulations. I mean, down to, you know, don't drink, don't smoke, don't wear white socks with a black suit type thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you sign on to do a gig for us, you know, so-and-so entertainment, you better be there kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, we have something similar to that. It's really just 2 pages, one page, 2-sided, rules and regulations. And once a year, when we have our staff meeting, which we skipped last year because it's usually in June, I give out a copy to everybody. We go through everything line by line. I have them sign it and hand it back in. So, I mean, there are guys that I have on staff that I have 18 of these, and they've evolved a little bit through the years. But I have things like, don't wear white socks with a suit because that looks goofy, you know, all to. There is no not showing up for this event. You know, if there's an emergency, you need to contact me ASAP, that type of thing. So, and again, knock wood, I just haven't had that as an issue.
That document will be in the DJ's vault next month. Okay, go ahead. Next question.
Thank you. So going on with if you get a bad DJ working for you, what do you do if you have a DJ that goes out and you get a terrible review back?
Yeah.
Like they really screwed up.
Yeah.
To the point where maybe you had to issue a refund.
It's a great
What do you do with the DJ? Do you take it out of their pocket? Do you have to start talking to them? Do you just let them go?
Yeah, this is a good question. And it happens. Even he'll admit it happens. It happens to me. You know, everybody has somebody. It could have been me. You know, in the past 10 years, 5 years, whatever. It's very rare. I'll knock on wood again. It happens though. A veteran last year or the year before went out, and I don't. You know, again, the first thing I always do is this. I'll say this. I want to hear both sides of the story, and very, very rarely do they match up. It is either the client's trying to get back money, or they didn't click, or there was
one thing to both sides of the story.
Yes.
I better hear the DJ side first, and my staff is well aware of that. If the client beats you to telling me that there was a problem, I'm going to be much more inclined to believe her than you. So my DJ, and every once in a while, I'll get that Sunday morning phone call, Mike, I got to prepare you for something. So I think that's something you need to instill in your staff.
That's a great point. But again, I didn't take money out of his check. I don't even think in this instance she wanted money back. I think she wanted me. She specifically got Randy on the phone. He called me and said, look, she doesn't want to speak to me about this incident. She wants to speak to you. And again, it sounded more like a miscommunication. What songs to play? He's being chirped in his ear from the younger guests about, it wasn't that big of a deal, in other words. But again, so I'm basically yes to the client. Client's always right. I'll speak to the DJ. And then to the DJ, I'm like, I get it, man. It's not that big of a deal. You know, and then, of course, a bad review online is the worst, to me, the worst thing that can happen. returning $200, $400, $500 will never make or break me. I don't like to do it. I don't have to do it often, but I will do it in order to not get the negative review. But if the negative review comes, just like Mike has had to do before, we bury it. We start, and we will reach out to all the people we've recently done. Hey, listen, I just got to be transparent. We got a bad review. Do you mind leaving us a review real quick? And it just boom, boom, boom. It bumps it down 5 spots. Nobody ever sees it.
I don't think legally you can take the money out of their check.
Okay.
When I have to refund money and it's the DJ, and it's clearly the DJ's fault, basically my conversation ends with, all right, you screwed up. You admitted you made it. I had to give them $400 back. Do you feel like you should participate in that? And if they say to me no, I go, okay, great. I'm not forcing you to, but to me, I'm going to be much less inclined to book you tomorrow but if they say to me, you know what, Mike, yeah, it was my screw up. I did this wrong. So I'll kick in half or the whole thing, then that tells me they're reticent, they understand their mistake, and they're making up for it. So I've never withheld money, but I've had to ask, do you feel like you want to participate in that?
Curious, I've heard Mike talk in the past about when you moved to a storefront, the brick and mortar, that it made a big change in your business. And I heard Joe talk about that today with the same sentiment. And I'm wondering if post-pandemic, in the era of Zoom, if you feel like, because I think you probably both are pretty established with brick and mortar now, but if you weren't, and to the guys that don't have that, would you still say it's just as powerful to get a brick and mortar moving forward?
God, these are great questions, man. It's ironic that you mentioned that because I was carrying technically 3 spaces in the building that I'm in, and I just basically moved it down to 1. Now, is there still TV in there, couch everywhere to meet? Do I still have a big white wall to be able to shoot content and things? Yeah, but I did reduce it because I think we saw one couple, actually was parents of the bride last year, and I still don't think, even now, end of June, that I've seen anybody in about 16 months in that office. And it used to be every other night somebody was coming in there to meet with either myself or the DJs. Like, people are still very Zoom heavy. Now, again, just like dancing's coming back, I think the in-person meetings are coming back. I love to show off my uplights. I love to have the photo booth running in the corner. I love to sit face to face with people, laugh, tell jokes, things like that. So I believe in the power of it. I never will consider not having some sort of an office space with some sort of a meeting room in it. And I think you would agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree. A few of our local competitors actually did close their office during it. Yeah. And our sales have been really strong the last couple of months. And Dominic, who's my right-hand man, he and I were talking about it the other day. And Dominic said, I think one of the reasons might be because we still have an office. We're seeing more than what Joe is seeing. We're not seeing the level pre-COVID, but we're getting a decent number of people that are coming into our office that want to meet face-to-face. But just the fact that we're throwing that option out to people, hey, you can do a phone call, you can do a Zoom meeting, or of course you can come into our office. I think that lets people know, they still have a brick and mortar. And I think that says something about the stability. I'm not knocking my competitors about to close their office, but I think that says something subliminally to the client about this is a legitimate business, not just somebody who wants to meet me at Starbucks.
Guys, I think we're run out of the room. Please, if you have any other questions, approach myself or Mike. We'd love to talk to DJs.
If you want, email them to us, and we'll make it a topic for a future podcast. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the PHDJ podcast with Mike Walter and Joe Bunn. We'll see you on the next episode.